Good evening and a very warm welcome to First Issues. All the guests on our program tonight attest to there being traditional or cultural mindsets and practices that are keeping Botswana from creating wealth. Last week, Nicolette Mashile spoke of there being some traditional or cultural mindsets and practices that stand in the way of wealth creation.
It's very important that we financially plan, and in African culture, you don't financially plan. Another thing that we don't do in the African culture is that we don't ask our parents what they're doing with their money, because money is not supposed to, that's how we will handle it. What is this? This is how we've got women who are being validated by money, because women are never taught about money.
Adding to the conversation tonight is Key Wealth Chief Executive Officer Mogomuzi France, who appears to be very much in agreement. But what is wealth? Who do we consider to be wealthy between the young executive living in a mansion in Pakalani and driving expensive cars that have all been obtained via credit from the bank in this era of high job insecurity? Or is it the woman of modest means who has built a house in Buntleng out of her own pocket and is able to feed and clothe her children using various sources of income? True wealth means different things to different people. For some, it is financial security, being able to meet your needs, recurring or otherwise. For others, it is having a passive income that can sustain your lifestyle, giving you the freedom to work when you choose to. And for others still, it is being able to leave behind assets that generate an income for your family for several generations after your passing. Mogomuzi France asserts that there are lies that consumers have been told, such as, quote, buying a house in Gaborone is always an asset. To show that you are working, you have to buy a car. And a job is the solution to capitalizing yourself. We speak to Key Wealth CEO Mogomuzi France about the attitudes and mindsets they find themselves up against when looking to, quote, rewire and reignite the intrinsic philosophies people have about debt and money.
What I've seen of recent, or what I've seen ever since I've been in this journey of educating people, I've seen that there's a difficulty in cultural, shift. We still hold those beliefs that rich people are devilish. So in actual, what we then do is we tend to be scared of money and we live in a scarcity mentality. So what I've seen is people are resistant. People tend to not embrace change and embrace that they have to get the understanding of how money works. Now people are still subscribing to an ideology of going to school, getting a job, and then falling into debt. So people think that that's the best way of doing it, and they're still subscribing to that. So we're still trying to get people out of the rat race, out of understanding that that's not the only way of creating wealth, because in actual fact that is not creating wealth, that is being a debt slave. So we're getting people to understand that there's another way of doing it, of now increasing your financial IQ and your capacitating yourself in terms of financial education. So the most important thing is people to understand how money works. So the resistance and also the cultural shift is what we've been facing in terms of getting people out of what they already know and trying to get them to know better things.
Which tools of yours have you found to be the most effective? Seeing that there does appear to be such a wealth of information, especially with regards to financial education, there's the internet, but people still struggle. So what is the most effective way of changing people's mindsets about money have you found in your experience?
We have realized that the only way, because you see when you talk about money, it's sort of a secretive issue, and people are scared of talking about money. Even in households, people don't talk about money. So what we have realized is we go to people's offices, we make presentations, and then we make them aware that you need to understand how money works so that they are able to come to us for help. And we have recently launched a fintech product, which is it's called the Wealth Management Portal, so that we can bridge the gap between financial education and accessibility to that information. So what we have seen, even though we're moving into the fintech space, which is a bit sophisticated, we still also need to understand that the landscape, the financial landscape, and the level of understanding in Botswana is still at a lower level. So we still have to take people through the normal way of education, through presentations, which we have seen that it works. And also, through attending, because we have attended a lot of wellness days where we have a bigger outreach, and then also we do it through radio. I mean, we have been having radio shows on Gebs FM, Juma FM for the past year, where we educate people. Those are the media platforms which we disseminate financial information. Look, this is a new thing. People didn't know where to get information. The only information they got was through financial institutions. Now, as Key Wealth, we're an independent financial planner. What we're saying is we're a fiduciary. We work at the best interest of you, not a product-based institute. So we want to give you a holistic information. We want to give you the proper information so that by the time you make a decision, you are well informed and you choose the right product.
Stay with us. When we return after the break, Nicolette France continues to share more about negative mindsets or counterproductive mindsets we have towards wealth creation.
What is the future of help? It's to help people find the great in themselves. The drive, the passion. Help them find their true potential. Help them stretch. Help them grow. That's why we help people help themselves, help the world, because a little help goes a long, long way. FNB, how can we help you?
Welcome back to First Issues, as we are here with the founder of Key Wealth, Nicolette France, talking about the necessary mindset shifts that are needed to create wealth in this country. You have some very interesting ideas. You say Botswana have come to believe some lies when it comes to money and debt. One of them being that having a job is a good way of capitalizing oneself. Another one being that to show that you're successful and you're working, you have to buy a car. And the third one being that owning a house in Gaborone is an asset. How are these lies?
Look, we have been wired to believe that owning a house is an asset. Better yet, owning a house in Gaborone is an asset. And I can tell you, it's the biggest mistake and biggest liability that one can ever do. Because you see, we sold this idea that when you have a house in Gaborone, it has value. Yes, in real estate, you can make money through capital appreciation, which is rising in value of that property. But let me tell you something. Buying a house in Gaborone makes you a debt slave. Because why? I always quote this. I always say that in Setswana, madi ga irelo mo Gaborone, madi a jelwa mo Gaborone. You see, when you look at a house, a normal house in Gaborone, or 3 beds house in Gaborone is about 1.1 million, and someone will pay about 10,000 for that. The rental that they will get from that house is about 4,000. So that means you have to top up over that loan for you to be able to pay the installment to the bank. Now, I might be saying something that is contrary to popular belief, but I can say that that asset is not an asset to you, it's an asset to the bank. But you see, the banking system is good, it's there to help you to leverage. But I think it's people that are not using it wisely to their favor, because debt and credit are meant to facilitate or even help you to leverage to create wealth. We have seen a lot of Botswana buying houses in and around Gaborone. I mean, we have seen Block 10, Solofelo East, and we can name them. People buying and rushing to buy houses there. But you see, right now, if you want to buy a plot in Solofelo, it's about 1,000 pula per square meter. That means a 400,000 square meter, 400 square meter, you buy that 400,000. I can take that money and go buy a house. So go buy a plot in Mogoritani. I'll get a bigger plot and I'll build small houses so that I can get more rent. I've been quoted saying that I don't like owning a house. I like owning houses. Why? Because if you own a house, you think that is your house. It's not your house. It belongs to the bank. So what happens is, if you own houses, you build houses that people can rent from you. A house is only an asset when it gives you rental. Now, we have been raised up in a society that says once you get a job, it's success. That's the wrong way of looking at things. Now, after you get a job, what happens is now you want to build a house or to buy a house and drive a big house and a big car. And then from there you go to work every day and you do routine stuff. You become a slave to employment. In actual fact, you are forgetting that the job that you're working at is not even yours. It doesn't belong. Remember, last year in November alone, we lost about 12,000 jobs. So that means your job is not secure. It's a tree that belongs to someone else. They can decide to cut it at any time. So the only way you're going to create intergenerational wealth is when, you know, the house that you buy will give you a rental that is more than what you are paying at the bank. In actual fact, what we say at Key Wealth is all your loans must be paid by other people. You shouldn't be paying your loans. So buying a house, I take it as a mistake, but more especially in Gaborone. I can tell you that where can you create wealth in terms of real estate? You know, I always tell people, look at places like Sese. Obviously, you have to look at the timelines to say, okay, how long will the mine be? Joining mine, will it be there for? But you see, you can still cash out now because Sese right now, 2.5 rents about 2.5 to 3,000, right? But the cost of acquisition of buying the plot there is lower. If you look at places like Mupani, if you look at places like Palape, Kasani, Maung, Kazungula, and if you are well aware, Mashoro, because there's a gas project, people don't understand these things. They all rush into investing in Gaborone, but then they become debt slaves. I mean, you need to understand these things because, our parents, this is our parents' idea. It's an old idea, it doesn't work. I mean, in this day and age, you become successful because of information. So the only way you're going to be successful in real estate, for example, as you said, is when you understand that, buying a house, you shouldn't attach emotions to it. Buying a house, you should look at it with an investment eye, from an investment perspective, to say, how is it that this house is actually going to create wealth for me? Remember, wealth is when your passive income exceeds your living expenses. See, a lot of people live beyond their means, and they finance the difference with debt, and it happens a lot. And I always say this, I can tell you, if you go to a bank and then you ask how much you qualify for, and they tell you that you qualify for about 2 million, what usually people do is they go out and buy a house worth 2 million, right? And they stay in the house, which is another biggest mistake. And what they do is they will never be able to create wealth, because wealth should be progressive. Your first investment or first property should allow you to invest in the second one, the third one, and the fourth one. And I'm not challenging, I'm not saying real estate people are doing anything wrong, but I can tell you, if a real estate guy comes to you and say, you're not buying a house, you're buying a home, the next thing you do is, because it's a home, you attach emotions. You say, oh, I'm going to raise my children in that house. Yes. And then you start, attaching emotions to the kitchen, to this.
Planting trees that are going to take you 10 years to grow.
Yeah, you're planting trees in a house that doesn't belong to you. I mean, come on. So, you see, in this day and age, we need to understand that jobs are not secure. So people must think in a progressive way. The African setup is in such a way that we are still subscribing to ideologies of, in the Western world, what they call the baby boomers. Now we're millennials, but we're in a situation where, things are moving. I'll give you an example. The bank has recently cut, the lending rate, which is about, the lending rate is 5.5, it was 5.5%, now it's 5%. And the prime is always lending rate plus 1.5%, which basically means that now people have, the cost of acquisition in terms of, you can borrow, you can acquire a house less cheaper. You can actually qualify for a better, for more than what you used to qualify for maybe 2 or 3 months ago. Guess what people are going to do? People are going to start refinancing their houses to buy cars. In actual fact, you must be refinancing your houses, if at all you're going to refinance, to invest in more property, to invest in more stocks, to invest in something that is going to give you, a passive income and create wealth for you.
I definitely believe some necessary conversations have been started. But do stay tuned, there's much more coming your way after the break.
What is the future of help? It's to help people find the great in themselves. The drive, the passion. Help them find their true potential. Help them stretch. Help them grow. That's why we help people help themselves, help the world. Because a little help goes a long, long way. FNB, how can we help you?
Welcome back to First Issues. Last week we featured the vivacious Nicolette Mashile, interrogating her assertion that African culture is keeping us poor. In the process, we mentioned how the young South African social entrepreneur, media personality, and financial educator had picked herself up by her bootstraps after finding herself disowned by her father for having failed the university studies that he had spent years paying for, which forced her to end up sleeping on the couch of her sister's one-bedroom apartment. Many of you were curious as to how she managed to raise herself up from rock bottom and become the property investor and entrepreneur that she is today, managing to buy her first 2 properties cash. Asking how she has managed to become a trusted voice in the world of financial education, now hosting television and radio shows on the subject. And with over 100,000 followers on Facebook alone, all at the age of 29, without even a university degree. Tonight, we bring back our vibrant guest to hear her personal journey from youthful folly to financial astuteness. We'd just like to know your story. Just tell us your story thus far.
So I'm gonna tell you who Nicolette is. Every time I get asked this question, I get so confused.
You don't know where to begin.
Yeah, because it's, you know, and it's only now that you start realizing as you get older and older that your story actually starts long ago, you know what I mean? It starts in childhood. But I think for me, I'll just highlight some of the things that are really important and things that shaped my story. So as a child, my father wanted great education for us. So we lived in Bushbuck Ridge in South Africa. And he moved us from Bushbuck Ridge, my sister and I. My sister was 10, I was 8 years old. And he moved us into a flat. And he was supposed to stay with us, but he never did. He always drove home. So home was at least 2 hours away. So my sister and I stayed in a flat. The two of us, she was, as I said, she was 10, I was 8, she was cooking. And that's how I realized that not only do I see that, that's where I learned a lot of the, you know, my independence, I'm a very assertive person, and most of the things that I do, I've got very strong opinions. Sometimes I need to be like corrected, and but I love it. You know, I love being corrected. I always find that correction comes with a lot of learning, and that for me is really what my life is based on. It's just I've made so many mistakes that everything has been a lesson throughout my entire life. I then moved to Rhodes University, spent the whole 4 years there doing absolutely nothing. Gosh, I spent my father's money. I chowed my father's money. You know when people say they chowed their youth, that's what I did. I enjoyed my youth. But what it really did is that after I failed my degree at Rhodes University and I went to Johannesburg in 2010, I realized that I was on the ground. And the thing that you realize that when you're on the ground, there's no other place to go other than up. And because of that, I kind of let myself to understand that everybody else understands that you have now failed, but you know you have not failed. Even for me, that might have looked like failure to everybody else, but I knew that's when my story actually began, because I was spoiled, properly spoiled. Like I was an actually spoiled child. I had to learn a very important lesson with failing my degree, and that lesson was, your father's not going to be, because I was a daddy's child. Everything goes, every single thing. So I think from there on, I knew what I needed to do. My goalposts in life had never changed. I went into a teaching post. I was a teacher, teaching little kids. I love kids, by the way, but you know, kids are a different conversation altogether. And even when I was a teacher, I knew that this is not my journey, you know. For me, my journey was, you know, impacting people's life. But funny enough, because I've done a full circle, I'm now back to actually teaching. So yeah, I went into an advertising agency after teaching because that didn't work, knew nothing about advertising, went into it, really became probably one of the star employees, well, the only person there because they had other people, but you know, if you are the only one running the entire company, you might as well not have everybody else because they're not doing their jobs. So yeah, that's what I did. And then I spotted an opportunity within the business that I was at. We're doing a lot of outsourcing of work and, you know, getting in other service providers. And I said to my bosses, oh, I had resigned. And my bosses were like, you're not going anywhere. And I said to them, no, I'm actually going to leave. And they said to me, no, you're not going anywhere. I said, okay, fine, let's negotiate this. And they came to me with this ridiculous salary, okay? This is now, I am moving from a salary of 13,000 Rand. They said to me, we'll give you 50,000 Rand. I said, there's absolutely no way. Because what you're trying to do is you're trying to trap me. Yeah. Because that's not market salary. That means that after you guys, I can never get a job anywhere else. So I settled with 26,000 Rand after that. And then part of that was me negotiating for my own company. So I said to them, you know what, you guys outsource a lot of work, let me outsource to me. And they allowed me to start my company, so they took me under their wing as their enterprise development company, and I started Bunch of Winners. And that really is where I grew and started understanding the value of money, what money can do for you, but also what money can really do to you as a person. You know, we always talk about money amplifies you. And the reality is that, yes, it does amplify you, but if you've got absolutely no money principles, what is it amplifying? It amplifies what you've heard from other people, what you have learned from other people, and I was becoming a person I didn't like. So I left my job in 2016, and I had no plan. People always talk about have an exit strategy. You need to know what it is that you're going to be doing. And I had no plan. I went out into the world and I decided, you know what, let me go out into the world and do something that has a little bit of impact. So I started financial literacy with Nicolette Mashile. And basically it was me creating, it was me creating a platform. I said, here's the platform. Let us all talk about our money issues, because we come from black families. Nobody talks about money issues in black families. It's a thing, let's wish it away. If we wish it away long enough, it will go away, but it doesn't. So I said, let's create this platform. And the way it blew up, blew my mind, because it made me realize how lonely we are in our financial mistakes, how lonely we are in our financial challenges, how lonely we are in our financial opportunities, how we don't know, but we are afraid of telling somebody that you don't know. So you walk around acting as if you know. You walk around, you drive them. Do you know that? And I was telling this to a lady, she actually confirmed it for me, a lady who works in a financial institution. She said, do you know that in our financial institution, it's the people that work here with money every day and sell financial products to other people that are the highest in debt? And I was like, that is absolutely sad. So the thing is, because the information is out there, it's out there, we know where to find it, but the reality is that we don't want to confront the issues that are actually happening in our lives financially. So it's easier to just say, you know what, I don't want to deal with it. But when you create a platform and you see, Nicolette also, because people have an assumption of who you are. So when they see you, they think, who uko TV na? She must have, you know, all her life together. But the reality is that we all don't have our lives together. There are aspects of our lives that still need a lot of improvement. So, but when they see you, they think, no, she must have her money stuff right. When they see you now sharing and saying, actually, last week I got duped, okay? I signed an OTP and I didn't know that an OTP is legally binding. Somebody else then comes with this story and they're like, I did the same thing. And then now it's like, okay, so how do we move forward? How do we make sure that the people that come after us don't make the same type of mistakes? I at some point in my life, borrowed a boyfriend $250,000. You know? Yeah. Because I loved him. And he told me he loved me. And I was like, yeah, we're gonna get married. Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, truth be told, after a month we broke up and that man left with my money. And every time I try to call him, he tells me, no, I'm gonna give him money. But those are life lessons. People might not borrow those big amounts, but they borrow people 5,000 rand, they borrow people 200 rand, 300 rand every single day. And the reality is that you need to learn these mistakes from somebody. You need to learn these lessons from somebody. And because we don't get it in our families, because our parents, at the end of the day, we can't blame them. They also come from a different generation. We are millennials right now. We're about, you know, getting the information. We're about progression. We're about taking risks. We're not into this job security thing. We're doing things for ourselves. So I think it's important that these conversations happen. And I always say, people say, so how do you explain yourself? What is your title? And there are people the smart people call me a social entrepreneur, but I call myself a conversation starter. So let's start the conversation. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the fact that you're dating a man who's broke and you gotta support him. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the fact that men must pay lobola. Do you know how expensive lobola is? This is a man who comes out of university at the same time as you. You guys are in a relationship, but somehow you expect him after 5 years to have the money to pay lobola and still take care of you. Where must the money come from? Where are your savings? You know what I mean? So these are the conversations that I really want us to have and engage on, and that's the hobby, basically.